Good morning. Welcome to Thoughts from the Car today. We're going to talk today about overwhelm, specifically holistic approach to overwhelm, and kind of thinking specifically this is for people who are more empathic, I think. It's for everyone, but as someone who identifies as someone who is more empathic, meaning I can feel other people's feelings very easily and then can easily take them on as my own, learning how to combat overwhelm and beat it is essential in order to live a whole, well, fulfilling life, a healthy life. And so I want to talk about a holistic approach to beating overwhelm. Okay, so first of all, overwhelm is that feeling that we have where we're just overburdened, things are too much, we can't go on, we don't know what the next step is, and you kind of feel lost and just it's too much. It's a too muchness. And so sources of this can be very different. It can be varied. It could be our workload, tasks that we have to do for work or life or whatever that may be, the mental load of that as well, personal challenges that we have. So this could be relationship issues. It could be financial issues. It could be physical health issues that you have going on. So personal challenges that are going on. It could be a lot of other external stressors like worldview and, things that you have literally no control over can be overwhelming. It's just overwhelming being human sometimes. So just humaning can be overwhelming. So these external stressors can affect us. And so the reason why chronic overwhelm specifically, is not a good thing that we need to be aware of is that it can cause a lot of anxiety and stress. We can have difficulty concentrating. There can be fatigue and exhaustion. There can be this feeling of out of controlness that we can have that can trigger like anger and aggressiveness out of fear. We can have a lot of physical ailments, so headaches, stomach aches, gastrointestinal issues. Overwhelm can trigger autoimmune issues. So being overwhelmed consistently or chronically is an issue. It's not a good thing for us. So we need to be able to know how to approach it and tackle it and beat it. But conversely, there are a few things that overwhelm can actually help us with. So overwhelm can actually be a great catalyst for a few things. It can be the first thing that comes to mind is that it can motivate us to take action. If we are someone maybe who procrastinates things and then we suddenly feel like, oh crap, I am overwhelmed because I have all these things I need to do, it can motivate us to take action and become a catalyst for change, where we can stop certain behaviors or certain things that we're doing that are causing us overwhelm. It makes us reevaluate, right? It makes us reevaluate and see that we have to take action. And it can also be a signal for us to change, that there has to be a change. It can be a sign that we're taking on too much or we're expecting too much of ourselves. And it's a prompt really for us to make adjustments and shifts in our life so that we can overall be well and healthy. And it's also, I think it helps us just prioritize things, people, situations in our life. It makes it easier for us to identify the things that really matter to us. Because when you're in a state of overwhelm, sometimes you're overwhelmed because all these expectations are on you and you're not able to do this other thing or participate in this other thing that you really want to do. This often happens, especially when we're talking about as parents, sometimes we feel overwhelmed because we want to do certain things for and with our children, but we can't because of all the tasks that we need to do or the expectations or, whatever work things that we need to do. And this can help us prioritize our life in a way that makes it so that we can spend more time with our children, so that we can do the things that we need and want to do that are true priorities for us in our life. So overwhelm can be good in that sense that it can be a catalyst for change and shifting and getting us to a place where we're not so overwhelmed. I think that we have to consider, if we're talking about the holistic way of beating overwhelm, something we have to consider is the interconnectedness of our mind, body, and spirit. So taking that holistic approach, that's what we're thinking about. So first we have to think about our mind and our body. Like, how do we beat this? We beat this through our mind and body with mindfulness, meaning that we are going to intentionally be in the present moment, dealing with what is going on right now. This means that physically we are going to regulate our mood a little bit better. Like we're going to be able to regulate our mood through mindfulness and through taking care of our mind and our body. Like doing something physical. So, can help us. So like taking a walk or exercise over a long period of time helps us regulate our mood and, also helps reduce the stress hormone cortisol, which can get us all out of whack. And when our cortisol is too high, that makes us feel more overwhelmed more often. And so I think another thing is, mind, body, and then our spirit, like making sure that in our mind and body, that we are taking care of ourselves through diet as well. Making sure that we're getting the nutrients that we need in order to, our body to be at its peak, to be able to function properly, I think is really important when we're talking about our mind and body. And then the next thing is that emotional regulation. And this kind of goes along with mind, body, spirit as well, the holistic approach, to where we have to increase our emotional intelligence, meaning that we are going to identify, understand, excuse me, and then manage our emotions appropriately. So there are tools that are out there and resources that are out there for us that can give us more emotional intelligence, that can increase our emotional intelligence. So when we do this, this gives us more emotional regulation. Something else, I talk about a lot is journaling and then also therapy. Journaling is great because it allows us to record what's going on, have a safe space to put out emotions and feelings that we have. And just, it's very cathartic to write things out often and then go back and be able to read them, especially down the line, because then we can see like where we overcome and come through challenges that we have. And then always, therapy and counseling are great resources for us to help us emotionally regulate, because it gives us a safe person, especially if we're in a space or time where we feel like we don't have safe people around us, which can happen at certain times in our life. And then the spiritual well-being part of the mind, body, spirit, interconnectedness and holistic approach to overwhelm is understanding the meaning and purpose for our life. And we do that through exploring our values and making sure that decisions that we're making in our life, all of our decisions, align with those values. And we've talked about values, and we've talked about sometimes our values shift and change as we grow and change. And so that's an exploration that we need to kind of keep open and be flexible with, and to make sure that we're completely aligning often. I think that this also means that we get out in nature. Being in nature and connecting to nature really is a holistic thing, because it helps us ground ourselves. It helps us know there's something bigger than ourselves. Nature is created by someone or something, right? And it doesn't just happen. And so being in it just gives us this sense of smallness in a healthy way. And knowing that there's something bigger out there, and that we don't have to control everything. And just being in nature itself, there's energy within nature. And I've talked about grounding to the earth and utilizing that energy for our own healing. In our mind, body, and our spirit. And then, gratitude practices. We always talk about gratitude. You guys know I do a gratitude practice every day. This just helps us ground us again and keep us in a place of knowing there's more out there than just ourselves. And then another part of the holistic approach is social support, making sure that we have strong, deep relationships, and we're putting our energy into those relationships and prioritizing those relationships can really help us, because then they become safe people for us to reach out to when we are in a time of challenge and we're feeling overwhelmed. Another thing with social support is volunteering our time, being out in the world and, living the purpose and giving back to the community and being a part of something that is bigger than just ourselves. This gives us fulfillment in life. And socially, we're not meant to do things alone, and we're not meant to be the lone wolf. We need others, and we need to be able to help others because others also need us. And then just in our environment, there are things that we can do with our environment. We can change our environment by decluttering within our own homes and spaces that we use for work. And I think our screen time and limiting social media, making sure we have boundaries for that is super important. A calming space is super important, so like certain colors, scents, atmospheres, even textures that we surround ourselves with can be a calming influence to us in order for us to be able to regulate ourselves through a state of overwhelm. And as an empath, I think there are specific things we can do as an empath to help us even more, specifically when we find ourselves in a space or a place and season where we are overfeeling and overwhelmed by other people's feelings. And I think the first thing is just creating boundaries in general. We have to create boundaries for ourselves and spaces and places that we find ourselves. We have to be able to limit our exposure to negativity and limit our exposure to places that are just not healthy for us, and people who are not healthy for us. And if you are someone who identifies as empathic, you know exactly those spaces and those places and those people. So we have to create those boundaries to limit that exposure. And then I think too, self-care. We talk about self-care all the time, but doing the grounding techniques and the mindfulness techniques and energy cleanses, making sure that we are when we feel depleted, that we're replenishing ourselves and through grounding and through pleasurable activities that we have. And I think something that goes with both the boundary side of things and like energy cleansing kind of self-care kind of thing is then shielding ourselves. We have to be able to shield ourselves, and that means, and this might be a little woo-woo to some of y'all, but it is like visualizing a shield literally around ourselves. And so we do that with like creating an energy shield. And so this is something that I've really been learning to do for myself. And it's been very, very helpful as I go through some transitions in my life to block bad energy, negative energy, however you want to say it. And it's been really helpful for me. And it's about visualization. I talked about visualization yesterday, and it is a technique that really it protects us. It protects our minds, our bodies, and our spirits. And I think that the way that we do this most easily to create the shield is you have to find a quiet space. You have to find a space that is calm and quiet, decluttered, etc. And then we just relax and ground your body into the earth or the floor. You can do this when you're sitting, wherever you're sitting, wherever your body is touching something, ground yourself into that, ground your feet into the floor so that you have an anchor. And then you're going to kind of visualize and imagine like white light emanating from your heart center. So like it comes from you, it comes from inside of you. And this, it's a very spiritual energy. It is something that I feel like it is, you can name it however you want to name it. Holy Spirit, you can name it angels, you can name it energy, chakra energy, however, whatever you want to name it. But it's just this, that it knows that it comes from your center, your heart center, is where that power gathers. And then it's like a heat and white light. And then you just kind of push it out from your center, and you're visualizing pushing it out from your heart center, and then it expanding around you as like an actual shield, this white light, like actually shielding you. And then you visualize it as a shield around your body. And then you visualize it that it is going to protect you. And as long as you are, this is part of mindfulness, as long as you are thinking about this can help us kind of distract us from the ticker tape of thoughts that are overwhelming us, because then we're focusing that energy on protection of ourselves, from the power that we receive, from divine, from God, from the Holy Spirit, however you want to talk about that, however you want to describe that. And so, yeah, so shielding ourselves, that's that holistic thing. So it's that mind, body, spirit thing, and creating that physical boundary, the self-care boundary, and then that spiritual boundary through shielding. Okay. So I love to give you guys some like practical techniques. So for, shielding is kind of that practical technique. Might be a little woo, I know. But here are some more practical techniques for beating overwhelm when you're in that overwhelming moment. The first thing is just, prioritizing tasks. Like this is that Eisenhower method when we talk about time management, is that you just list out all the things that are overwhelming you. And then you have to prioritize which things can I actually do? What do I have control over? What can I actually tackle? Like what can I actually do? What is the most important to me? And get that thing that is most urgent taken care of. And then mindfulness practices. We've talked about this. This is a very practical thing through so many things in our life. I've been talking about all these different challenges that we have through all these different videos. This mindfulness and being in the present moment really does change how we see the world, ourselves, and how we deal and behave and react and respond to things going on in our life. So, mindfulness, really being in that present moment, is such a wonderful tool that you can do, I can do, we can all do this with practice. And we just sit in that present moment. Sometimes people meditate, and it's just being mindful of what you're doing right now and what is around you right now, what you are experiencing right now. And some of this involves doing deep breathing. We've talked about box breathing, meditation. Another thing, I don't know if I've ever mentioned it before, but progressive muscle relaxation, which is where you tense up different types of muscles and then you release it and relax it. And then let me think. I know there's some other practical things I wanted to mention. Setting realistic expectations. We have to be realistic with our expectations. Avoid perfection, celebrate our wins. Limiting our distractions is another practical thing we can do. So, have a dedicated workspace. We talked about decluttering, technology boundaries, social media boundaries, making sure that we're not using our phones, 24/7, creating boundaries for yourself. Maybe you put a timer on your phone. I have like a sleep timer on some of my apps that at 10 o'clock things shut off. And if I'm up past 10 and on my phone, I have to physically go and turn them on. So it's just like a good reminder that it's a boundary for myself and I have to shut off, and I have to, create that space for myself so that I don't feel overwhelmed. Seeking support, counseling, therapy, they're not shameful things. Using coaching for support so that we can prioritize our life and reach our goals. These are all good. Seeking that support is not a bad thing. We need each other and others need us. Taking breaks. We have to take breaks. Schedule your breaks out, whether they're vacation breaks or just breaks throughout your day. And scheduling pleasure in our lives. We have to have pleasure and fun in our life. Otherwise, we're going to feel overwhelmed by adulting, all the adulting and the requirements that are required of us. Learning to say no. This is part of self-care. We have to learn to say no. Saying no is not going to hurt people. Really, it's not. And part of saying no is delegating tasks that we don't have to do. Somebody else can do it. We don't have to do all the things. And I'm talking to you moms. We don't have to do all the things. Specifically, I'm talking to you women. We have a hard time saying no. Learning the art of saying no is such a helpful technique and tool for us to release overwhelm in our life. And time management. We've talked about time management. I've done videos on time management, the different techniques, Pomodoro technique, which is the 25 minutes, time blocking, where we do certain tasks during certain time blocks, and the Eisenhower method, which we prioritize tasks. So, there are techniques for us. There are practical things we can do to overcome overwhelm. So if you're feeling overwhelmed today, I challenge you, use one of these techniques. Think about it more holistically. How is your mind, your body, and your spirit right now with overwhelm? Is your mind more overwhelmed? Is it your body that's overwhelmed? Is it your spirit that's overwhelmed? Try one of these techniques that I talked about to integrate all of your mind, body, and spirit to get in a more healthy place. And if you need more support for this, I am here. DM me, or I'd love to set up a coaching with you. I am an emotional health advocate. I've written journals. I know a lot about this. And I can absolutely help you when you're feeling overwhelmed, especially with like goals and tasks and just life in general. I'd love to help you through it. And if that's something you'd like to do, you can go to my website, briannalgeorge.com. Other than that, guys, have a fantastic Thursday. See you later.